I think it's something that gets overlooked a lot in terms of hypertrophy training, because a lot of what you're doing throughout the lifespan of training, it looks pretty similar. There's not a ton
Yeah.
of variance in the things that you do, but I think the variance comes in it more so internally. Like, you're allowed to have more variance if you have greater range of motion, if you have pain-free range of motion, if you have greater abilities to stabilize the core, the pelvis, the hip, the shoulder. And the better you understand how to do those things and the more effective you are at doing those things, it gives you more options in the way that you can train. And that's something that I think is really important with something that becomes so repetitive, is you're doing this similar things, maybe not the same things, for long periods of time. We're talking years at this point, right? So from 1 week to the next, to the next, to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next, if there's small incremental decreases in function or range of motion or the ability to stabilize certain body regions, then what that's going to result in is an even more limited scope of training. You're going to be more limited in the exercises you can choose. You're going to be more limited in the effectiveness of those exercises. And I think that's something that I've seen even in like high level bodybuilders that they start to suffer from after a period of
Yeah.
time. So I think that paying attention, and that's why, Max the GOAT, you're the GOAT when it comes to this, because paying attention to those things and understanding that we're not going to accomplish these goals. Like I said, well, what did you say? 20 pounds in 8 months. I did it in 2 years, whatever. Um, but the idea is we're talking about like the time horizon is years when we're talking about this. It's a long-term commitment. So
Yeah.
in the scope of things, like taking a year, and it's not like it's a not productive year that you took to take that
Yeah.
step back and really establish joint function, get yourself healthy. Kind of another part of this too is like energy systems, and I'll speak to that in just a minute. But like when I first started doing hypertrophy training, switching from Olympic lifting, is I just didn't have the energy systems built up to be effective in hypertrophy training.
Yeah.
So that, like, I had to build a runway in terms of that progression. So taking that time, it's as I was saying, it's not a non-productive period of time, but what you're doing is you're building a really solid foundation that now once you take the time and you build that foundation, you won't have to do that again. You'll always have to circle back and touch on that, and there might be phases where you need to spend time focusing on, like you and I worked on this a bit in Tampa, like through your hip and knee. But there
Yeah.
might be times where you have to circle back and you have to reestablish a baseline of function. But it's not going to take a year to do that. It's going to take a lot less time to be able to get to that same level of function or further that level of function, because the more you progress in whatever it is towards your goal, you're going to need a higher level of function to be able to continue to push the envelope in terms of force output, in terms of joint variability, in terms of training variance. That's another thing too, is that the longer someone's training age is, the more appropriate it is to have more variance in their training. So like someone that's brand new to the gym, you can have them do like very, very basic stuff. Like you can have them do, I don't know, prime flat press. You can have them do a pec fly and then some tricep variations, and just do that on repeat for a reasonable amount of volume, and they'll have progress for a long period of time. But the longer you do that for, the less effective that becomes. So you have to add in different pressing variations. You have to play with internal versus external stability. You have to play with tempos, like volume, intensifiers, things like that, so that you can still get incremental progress. And the progress you'll get over time is going to be less. So these little things become that much more important the longer you're doing this. Like, I don't know, in terms of humans, I think both of us are probably to the right side of the bell curve in terms of muscle mass and even body weight. Like even I'm to the right side of that. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
the average adult male is probably like 180 pounds or so.
Yeah.
Now, the further you get to the tail end of that bell curve, the less progress that there's going to be available. Like, you can only have so much muscle mass as a land mammal breathing human. There's only so much that's possible to put on. So the closer you get to that, the harder it's going to be to have progress. And like you said, that year that you took to really establish a baseline and increase function, decrease pain, what you did there is you actually prolonged your training lifespan, because now you're able to run more current through the system. You're able to have a higher training output. You're able to have more variance in your training. Because another point too is that the less variety you have in the training, the more you're stressing the same structures in the same way over and over again. And the more you do that, the more prone you become to a few things. But one of those is going to be, we'll say, generally repetitive stress injury, which a lot
Yeah.
of times in hypertrophy training tends to be like tendonitis, joint pain. But then also the other side of that is you start to become the shape of the movements that you do, whether that's good or bad. Like, if I just do prime flat press and pec flies, I'm going to be really good at those two things, but I'm not going to have the variance to do an incline dumbbell press, or not to a meaningful extent, because I haven't trained that. So the more variance you can add into your training, it just gives you more options in terms of, yes, having that incremental progress over time, but also it gives you greater variability so that you're not stressing your body in the same way, so that structures aren't going to break down. So there's a lot of value in that, and that's not haphazardly. I know that that didn't
Yeah.
happen just by coincidence. Like, that's well thought out, and that's a really methodical way to go about training, especially with, fuck man, I love Mac. Like, only the committed. Like, he doesn't fuck
Yeah.
around. It's like, if we're going to do this, we're going to commit to how many years of training. Like, the time horizon isn't 16 weeks out from right now. The time horizon is like, all right, we're going to take this year, we're going to get you right. And then the next 2 years, like, you're going to put on 20 pounds in 8 months. Like, that's insane progress. So
Yeah.
it's really, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I think that's it works if it works from like the coach and the client dynamic, right? Because I remember when I started working with Mac, he said like, "Oh, we're going to go into like a lower volume phase. We're going to work on these things." And I mean, good or bad on my side, I remember not even asking him like, "Hey, how long is this going to be for?" or any of these questions. It was just like, "I for sure, like whatever you say, we'll just roll with it," you know.
Mhm.
And there was never, "Hey, can we like get out of this phase?" You know. It was.
Yeah.
It may have been some questions, just like, "Hey, what's the plan? Like, what are we envisioning for the next couple months?" Just so I know, like, what I need to be looking for. But it was never like, "Hey, we've been doing, I don't know, this split, or we've been doing these same exercises for 6, 8, 12 months now. Can we just swap
Mhm.
them out?" Because they were working, so there was no real reason for me to look for a different option. And I think that the ability to, for both from a client to be able to withhold that, and from a coach to not feel the pressure of, oh, my client is going to be upset if I don't give him a new program every month. I need to like change some stuff up. Like, if it's working, it's working, right?
Mhm.
And I think so many people get caught up in like, how can I maximize the most amount of gains or strength gains in my current training block? And they just set up themselves in a cycle of like, can I get like a really high, and then I hit a wall, like either I can't progress or things hurt or whatever, tendonitis and limiting range of motion. Functionality is not there, and you have to like cycle back all the way down, and it takes you so much time to get back up. And
Mhm.
I think it's very common in seeing this, even in people that have like an advanced training age, at least in regards to time of like in the gym. But it's a very beginner mindset of just, I want to do the most I could do right now, instead of just using each training block as like a little step to potentiate for the next training block and the next phase and the next one. And then you can continuously go up. Um, I don't know. I don't want to say indefinitely, but like a lot longer. And then maybe you have to circle back and touch on some things like you mentioned, but you don't have to be in this constant cycle of like, I push really hard and now I have to like chill out for a month or 2 months or whatever time frame where I have an injury. And you can just keep this steady progression going for a long time, where it allows you to push, whether it be volume or load or can you build the capacity in different energy systems, like you mentioned? Can you start keep pushing food? Because that's something else that Mac I think does really well. Like, can we set a baseline on the nutrition side so we don't have any issues going forward? So I think it's part of planning, part implementation, part can you are you willing to delay gratification, if you will, on the getting bigger, getting stronger, and maybe like your workouts will not look super cool on Instagram, and it'll be the same thing one next to the one week to the next. But in the long term, this is what really allows you to, like, for you, it's like 1 pound a month for 2 years is like, especially having trained for, I don't know how long you've been training, but like I know probably like 15, more than 15 years at this point.
I've been training in a gym, like in a structured, like strength setting for, I thought about this the other day, for 22 years now.
Jeez. Yeah. So even for like someone who's super new to the gym, 1 pound a month for 2 years is insane. For someone who's trained that long, even if you switched like the type of training that you do, it's it's very rare to find that in like wherever you look. So I think the ability to do that, and even being able to do it, because I mean, we've talked a bunch about like you had some issues with your quad tendon, you had some issues with other stuff, like being able to keep that progression even when you have to, like, hey, I have to pivot now because maybe I can't push this side so much right now, but maybe I can focus on these other properties of movement or on these other areas of opportunity even while you're dealing with, I don't know, X or Y, whatever you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made two really good points in there that I want to expand on. The first of which being the faster your progress, the faster you're going to hit a wall. Like
Yeah.
and like we can take a real example from this from again when we were in Tampa. Um, we did a couple pool workouts and we did dumbbell rows in those workouts.
Yeah.
I don't remember the weight we got up to on the first time. I think so. The dumbbells at the gym we're at are in kilos. So we did like just competition shit like we always do. I think we used 80 kilos or
Yeah.
85 kilos the first week. And we both kind of just did like, I don't know, we're like 8 to 12 reps, whatever. Like we'll hit as many as we can. We were both right around the 12 rep range. Like, all right, that was pretty like that was RPE like 9 to 11, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And then the next week we came back on our pool workout. We're like, fuck it. We're using the 90 kilo dumbbells this week. And it's like there's no need to do that,
No.
but like we just ramped up intensity very quickly. And a lot of people think like intensity needs to progress to have progression in the gym, which is absolutely not true. Intensity in terms of loading, right?
Yeah.
Intensity in terms of the way that you're approaching sets, the RPE that you're hitting, and the quality of the sets. Yeah, like these things need to improve session over session for you to have progress. But I've been on exercises where I'll be at the same weight for months at a time. And there's maybe just a marginal increase in reps that I'm doing. But I think a big thing that's important, especially in when you're trying to build muscle, it's going to be the quality of those reps. Like yes, we rode the 90 kilo dumbbell for a number of reps. I don't even remember. We'll say 8 just to make ourselves feel good. Um,
I got 10, but yeah.
yeah, if you got 10, then I probably got 12. But um, okay, that's a baseline. I did
Yeah.
this many reps at this weight. But you know what? That was too heavy for me to have a meaningful stimulus.
Yeah.
So like that was definitely ego lifting. So if I were to do that again, like there's no way I should progress from 11 reps because you got 10 to 12 reps to 13 to 14. That's not the progression that's going to benefit me in that scenario. The progression that's going to benefit me is probably not even going that heavy, but if I am going to go that heavy, is maintaining intensity in terms of loading, but improving quality in terms of movement
Yeah.
quality. So that means less movement outside of the joints that I'm trying to isolate. So like a dumbbell row, I want a very static core. I want a static lower body position. I'm just basically trying to create shoulder extension, right? I'm trying to bias the lats with this row. So if I were to improve upon this, it wouldn't be more reps or more weight. It would be less movement in the rest of my body outside of that shoulder joint is more isolated movement, more constant tension through the lat, maybe having some sort of tempo, something like that, like a dumbbell row. It's going to be a lot easier to have a meaningful tempo in the eccentric than the concentric, maintaining tension in between phases. So like as I control the eccentric, going right back into the concentric, as opposed to controlling the eccentric, kind of letting that arm hang for a bit, catching my breath, letting my lat recover, and then doing another rep. So if I can maintain better muscular tension throughout that rep, if I can isolate the movement pattern more, that's going to be the way that you progress. And anyone who's been training for a longer period of time, that's the way you have to look at progress, because it's not going to be more reps every week. It's not going to be more weight every week. It's going to be more subjective, qualitative improvement that you're looking for, that's still going to bring you the progress that you're looking for if you're controlling the variables outside of that.